Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending another Bruce A. Berman seminar. Here now to talk about negotiating is Bruce A. Berman.
Thank you. Thank you. Life is one long series of negotiations. Whether you realize it or not, it applies to getting what you want out of a relationship, making your kids behave, or even receiving the raise, perks, or job you deserve. It involves getting the best deal when you buy or sell something, hire someone to work for you, deal with difficult people, win in a courtroom, and a lot more. With the right negotiation strategy, you'll get more money, more respect, and better results in all your dealings. Do you know who is the most difficult person you may ever negotiate with? It could be yourself. That's right, because when you have a new idea, career, goal, or activity, you may talk yourself out of doing something that is a bit of a stretch. You may be afraid to take the risk you need to get ahead. You can sabotage your own future by failing to give yourself permission to try something that could provide great rewards. Today's lesson will help explain ways to break old negative negotiating habits with yourself and with others, so that you can get what you want and you deserve. You'll learn what it takes to get the courage to seek out new opportunities. I will show you how to convince people to agree with your point of view and close a deal. Developing these skills will make a difference in your relationships, in your career, and in everything you do. I know this approach works because in my career, I've negotiated thousands and thousands of business deals and have made and kept millions and millions of dollars. When I want to get my way, I pick just the right time to negotiate so that I'll get the results I want. And I know when to walk away if I have to. Like most parents, I also negotiate with my kids on things like bedtime, privileges, and rules. And that's not easy. Believe me. Whenever I buy a new car, a house, or things for my office, I follow the principles I'm going to share with you. So forget about everything that's holding you back, keep an open mind, and listen to these proven strategies to get you started. When you negotiate, you want to get to the point where the other person agrees to your terms, conditions, and ideas. So remember this strategy called the agree approach. This includes 5 key steps in negotiating. It will help you lose your fear of going after what you want. Remember these words because I will be talking about them in great detail later. A is for ask. G is for goal setting. R is for research. E is for engaged. And the last E is for execute. You don't get what you are worth. You get what you negotiate. The more money you make in a deal, or the better you deal with others, will depend on how well you can master negotiating skills. Let's review the first step, which is to ask. If you want to be successful and be the best negotiator, or just learn how to get people to agree with you, you have to lose the fear of asking for what you want. How many times have you compromised and then been unhappy because you didn't ask for what you really wanted? When you ask for something, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. But in order to get what you want, you need to think about some things first if you want to win. The first step is to figure out what you want. Let's start with a personal example. You want to go to a baseball game and your wife wants you to spend the day with her family. How are you going to convince her that it's in her best interest if you go to the game with your friends? So first, you have to negotiate with yourself. You've been looking forward to this game for a long time. Your favorite teams are playing. You purchase your ticket, and this opportunity won't happen again soon. As much as you and your wife do things together on the weekends, you're not really looking forward to a boring family outing. So you decide that your interests are more important during this well-deserved day off than fulfilling a family obligation. Now you know what you want. Next, think about what your wife wants and what's motivating her to ask you to join her. Let's look at things from her perspective. This is the time to pause and listen. Knowing when to pause and listen can make or break any negotiation. You learn from her that both of you haven't seen her family for a while, and she doesn't feel like making the drive by herself. So to get your way, you have to be willing to listen to your wife before blowing the whole negotiation with a statement like, "Why would I give up a Saturday at the game just to drive 2 hours to listen to your family complain?" Next, it's time for empathy. That's important for any negotiation, whether it's personal or business. You must convince the other person that you are interested in what they have to say. Get her to think you want to go, but you have a schedule conflicting that's standing in your way. You may say something like, "That sounds great. I haven't seen them for a while, and it would be nice to get together. Unfortunately, I told Joe I would go to the game with him, and it's on the same day. Is there a chance that you could drive over to your mom's house with your sister? And maybe we can have the whole family over here in a few weeks." Then tell her that you're sorry. You won't be able to take her there on this trip, but you've already got this commitment and have the tickets. At this point, you're working together. How can she refuse? You've solved several things by negotiating this way. You listened to your wife and convinced her that you were sorry you missed this opportunity. You solved 2 problems for her. She could drive with her sister, and you gave her an alternate date when you could see her family. How can she argue with this? You got what you wanted, and she was presented with information in a way that wouldn't get her angry or alienate her. In fact, she thought your option was a good idea. Of course, you'll have to spend a day with her family in the future, but you met your goal. You got to go to the game with your friend, and that's what you wanted. I'm sure you know that men and women tend to communicate differently, and you should always keep this in mind when you negotiate with the opposite sex. Men are much more likely to get to the point when they communicate. Women are more likely to look at a situation from many angles and ease you into the conversation, rather than directly coming out and asking for what they want. This style is common knowledge. So women should try to be more direct when communicating and negotiating with men, and men need to ease into what they want before jumping right in with a request. Another important thing to remember is to always control your emotions when you negotiate. That's easy to say, but it can be sometimes very difficult. Jim was a cabinet maker and spent 2 days building a cabinet that he installed for Mrs. Smith. She gave him 50% up front and was supposed to pay him the remaining 50% after the installation. After it was complete, Mrs. Smith said the cabinet didn't look the way she expected and therefore wasn't going to pay Jim the remaining 50%. Now, Jim couldn't tell whether this woman was trying to cheat him out of the money she owed him and made up this excuse, or if she was really dissatisfied. He couldn't afford to walk away with just 50% payment. He didn't want to take her to court. He knew that he did everything she asked him to do. He was not about to lose money on this deal. His first reaction might have been to say, "I did everything you wanted. Are you trying to rip me off? What's your problem?" Instead, he paused. He waited for her to explain why she was dissatisfied. His silence gave him time to control his anger and gather his thoughts, while Mrs. Smith was forced to continue talking. She said the cabinet just didn't look as nice as she expected, and it wasn't the quality she wanted. Jim then responded, very matter-of-factly. He knew that it was important to ask questions to find out why she was dissatisfied. He needed clarity, an important component of any negotiation. He told her, "Mrs. Smith, you signed off on the drawings. I gave them to you before the job started. I built the cabinets to the specifications in the drawings. So can you be more specific about what you don't like about the cabinets?" Mrs. Smith said, "Well, they just look so plain, I'm disappointed." He knew he had to dig deeper for more information before reacting. He asked her to explain what she meant by plain. She told him that she thought the cabinets would stand out if they had something to make them look less bland. Then he told her that the cabinets were built to specifications that she approved, but he could put molding on the cabinets in a few areas to give them an added dimension. He happened to have his design book with him in the trunk of his car, and he showed her sample cabinets that had this option. She said yes, that would look great. Jim responded by agreeing and telling her that he would be happy to quote an additional price for the molding and could begin work on the molding after he receives his payment for the final work that he had completed. He said since the molding was important to her, he would reschedule some other jobs and could begin to work on her project the next day if she paid him now. He collected his check for the remainder of the cabinets and got a check for the entire molding job in advance. He explained that he collects the total cost of all jobs under $500. This way, he avoided having to go through another collection process with her later. By keeping his emotions in check and clarifying why she didn't like the original job, he was able to get what she owed him and walk away with a satisfied customer. Let's review some other tips you need to remember when asking for something. Remember what I said earlier about listening? Never interrupt someone when they are talking. Let them continue their thoughts until they run out of steam. This may be difficult to do, but interrupting only annoys the other person and can quickly turn a negotiation into an argument. Also, the time you spend listening to them can help you sort out what's really motivating them. It will help you discover their hidden agenda. And everyone has a hidden agenda. If Joe had started arguing with Mrs. Smith, he never would have realized that he could solve her problems so easily. And when someone says something that you know will create a problem, you should pause and restate or rephrase what that person said. This brings clarity, and clarity helps you get the results you want. Here's one more example of how to ask for something you want and to know when to compromise. Susan found out that she was being moved to a new position in her company with a new boss. This was going to require more work, but fortunately, the new job was exactly what she had always wanted to do and would be much more exciting than her current position. Also, her current job was being phased out, so she didn't take the new offer, she might be out of work. Susan wanted to receive a $10,000 annual increase for this new level of responsibility, and that was based on what she knew about the salary levels in her company for people with this type of job. She met with her new boss and told him how excited she was to take on this new role and described some of the things that she could accomplish in this new position. Then she explained how this position required considerably more time and a higher level of skills than her current position. At this point, she started to ask for what she wanted. She explained why she should receive a $10,000 annual increase. She didn't think she'd get this right away, but she figured she'd ask him for more than she expected and compromise on the time frame of the raise if she had to. Her new manager explained that the company was going through a downsizing process, and he was saving her job and presenting her with a better opportunity. However, he recognized the extra work involved. He said that within a year, she would have an annual review, and the company would reevaluate the job and could give her an increase at that time if she met all of her objectives. She responded that she understood the company policy, but a year was a long time to wait, especially since her new responsibilities required considerably more effort and would provide better value to the company. What could he do for her now? What if she not only met, but exceeded his objectives within 6 months? Could he accelerate the process? He said he'd look into it. She asked him to work with her to define in writing what meeting and exceeding the objectives would entail. Then she drew up a document about how she intended to exceed in 3 months as well as again in 6 months. They came to the agreement that if she could exceed the goals in 6 months, she would get the raise at that time. If not, she would have to wait a year. She told him that sounded fair, but asked what other ways could she benefit within 3 months. She was on a quarterly bonus structure and was willing to wait 3 months for an immediate increase if she had to. He said that if she exceeded her quarterly goals, he could give her up to 150% of her bonus in 3 months, in addition to the $10,000 salary increase in 6 months. So what did she get out of this? She got the $10,000 she wanted, and by knowing her 3-month goals, she was able to exceed them and get 150% of her quarterly bonus. Her only compromise was that she had to wait 6 months for the annual raise. However, if she never asked for the money, she wouldn't have gotten it, even after a year in the job, because the company gave very low raises. Her boss was happy because she exceeded the goals, and she was satisfied because she wound up with a better job and more money, a 150% bonus in 3 months, and a $10,000 annual raise in 6 months. Without this negotiation process, she would have probably gotten a $3,000 raise after a year and at best received 100% of her quarterly bonus, not 150%. So to summarize, we've learned that it's important to ask for what you want. You won't get anywhere by being afraid. You may wind up getting a lot more than you expected. But before you ask for something, get a clear understanding of what it is you really want. You need to be empathetic to connect with the other person, clarify any issues, and listen to the other person, and control your emotions. G is for goal setting. Next, we'll review how goals can help you get your desired results. If you want to be a better negotiator, then think of negotiation as a lifelong process. Why do you think it's so important to set goals? It's because without setting goals, how will you know if you've been successful? This is just as important in your personal life as it is in your career. How many people do you know that go to the same job day after day, year after year, without feeling any reward from it other than the ability to just get by? They wonder why they never get ahead. In fact, I know a family who made a combined income of about $200,000 a year, and they still live from paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because they never set goals on what they wanted to do with their money, and never set limits on how much they could spend. They didn't think about how much they will need to save for retirement. They just bought what they wanted and worried about it later. They are both in their mid-50s, and they don't have the career options they once had. If one of them lost a job, they'd go from getting by to facing a downward spiral that could force them to have to sell their home. If only they set goals and objectives earlier in their lives, they could have something to show after a lifetime of work, besides just some equity in a house that they may someday now not be able to afford. Ask yourself, what do I want? What's most important to me? How do I prioritize what I want so that I know I'm spending time in the right places? How do I give myself permission to take a risk? And when will I know if I've met these goals? Break down your goals. Let's say you have a two-part vision for your goals. Part one is exercise more often and lose 20 pounds. The other part is related to your business. You want to close a lot more deals and make more money. You can't lose 20 pounds in a few days, and you're not going to be able to turn around your sales without some effort. Most people give up on their goals because they're unrealistic. They want everything to happen magically and quickly. What can you do to make your goals a reality? Break them into manageable chunks. It's like the old expression, how do you eat an elephant? The answer's simple, one bite at a time. Start by writing down your goals. Say your goal is to lose 20 pounds and increase sales by 30%. Then give yourself a time limit on when this will happen. Let's say you allow 3 months. Map out the goals week by week and list the things you are going to do to get there. For the personal goal, maybe that means working out 5 days a week, cutting out dessert, except on weekends, and cutting carbs 1 meal a day. You may have to do some research to determine what diet and exercise plan is best for you. Writing down your goals each day will give you the discipline you need to keep going. Enlisting a friend or significant other also helps. If you like to run, plan to run with a friend a few days a week. You'll help motivate each other. Once a month, assess where you are. Maybe you wanted to lose 7 pounds the first month. If you're not there, then you may need to increase the number of workouts as you go into the next month. The point is, don't let your goals slip. Don't stop getting on the scale for fear of what you might discover. Keep checking and revise your strategy when needed. For your sales vision, write that down. Figure out how many calls you need in order to reach that objective. Set milestones each month and check them. If you're not meeting them, re-examine what you're doing and increase the number of calls you can make. Try to find out why certain deals that you may have expected to close didn't happen. You may even decide to get some additional sales coaching to help you. What happens when your goals conflict with those of your family? Let's say the sales goal means you'll have to travel more often, and your wife will have to pick up the slack. What's the best way to get her to buy into your new goals? Well, find out what she wants. Maybe she's anxious to buy some new furniture for the house, but doesn't think you can afford it. Or maybe she wants to go with you to Hawaii or Europe. Ask her what she'd like to do if she didn't have to worry about money. After listening, tell her that you could make that happen for her if you put in a little extra effort at work. How many wives could argue with the information when it's presented to them in a what's in it for me approach? I've seen goal setting do wonders in the workplace. People who didn't seem that interested in their jobs became motivated when they got incentives for having goals. They were anxious to help make their company more profitable by working harder, putting in extra hours, and taking on new projects. That's because many companies offer bonuses based on goals. Employees help set up and negotiate these goals with their employers. They know that they will get a certain amount of money depending on the objectives. This is the employee's opportunity to negotiate on what extra work they're willing to take on, depending on how much extra they want to make. And it's the employer's chance to get more value out of the employee. This is what some people call a win-win negotiation strategy. The more successful an employee is at accomplishing his goals, the more money an employee gets. A win-win philosophy is the most important negotiating tool I use. If I walk away from a deal and I feel that I got 99% and the other party got 1%, that deal usually ends up being rescinded later. A deal is negotiated properly when both people walk away feeling they got the best deal they possibly can. If one person's overjoyous and the other one's terribly depressed, it leads for future problems. If both people walk away feeling they got a fair deal, maybe one's a little happier than the other, that is the best kind of negotiation. You never want to leave a negotiation where the other party is completely dissatisfied, because they will find a way to unwind that deal. Speaking of win-win situations, don't hesitate to negotiate referral deals with people who can help you. If you work with an office supply company, ask the rep to give you a discount if you send him a certain number of referrals each month. You get the discount and he gets the new business leads. I do a lot of business this way, through referrals. Now let's talk about some of the most difficult people to negotiate with. The people who just smile and cause you to melt. Yes, we're talking about your kids. How you negotiate with them will make a difference in the type of people they become. If they can stay up when they want to, eat when they want, say what they want, and spend what they want, then these kids will have no limits and no respect. They will not know what to do once they are on their own, and mommy and daddy are no longer available to solve their problems for them. You don't need to get angry or into heated arguments with your kids. Here's how to negotiate with them and show them who's boss. Kids like rewards, and they also seem to do better when you set limits. So if you want Johnny to get good grades, find out what privileges motivate him. Maybe he wants to use your car on the weekends, so you make a deal. If he gets at least a B average, he gets the car every weekend. If he doesn't, he has to wait until the next grading period to drive. Set your limits and stick with them. If he doesn't make the grade, he doesn't get the car. Don't back down. Once you back down, you will be taken advantage of again and again. It's the same with kids in their bedtime. Younger kids can stay up until 9 if they clean up their room. If the room's dirty, they go to bed earlier. No amount of whining, screaming, or arguing will make a difference. Your goal is to get them to clean their room. Teach them how to meet goals at an early stage, and they will thank you for it later, much later. Like maybe not until they grow up and have kids of their own. Here is what we have learned in goal setting and negotiations. You won't meet your objectives if you don't set goals. Break them into manageable sections and prioritize them. Don't try to accomplish everything at once. And if you write them down, you'll be more likely to follow through. R. Research. It's so important to be prepared for any negotiation. If you are prepared, you'll be more likely to come out ahead. One of the first things you should do is conduct your research before you negotiate. Let's say you're looking to hire someone to provide your business with computer services. Call a few companies. Find out how long they've been in business and how much they charge by the hour and by the job. Ask about what kind of turnaround they can provide you, what hours they are open, and other details. And if you're seriously considering using them, get some references too. I always think it's important to seek out more than one potential company. Determine what's most important to you related to these services. Is it the price? Is it reliability? Is it quality? Is it their ability to respond immediately to your problems? That will help you decide what company to use. So now it's time to negotiate with the vendor. Let's say Joe has a better response time than Harry, but Harry's 10% cheaper. You know that response time is your most important priority, but Joe doesn't know that. So when Joe quotes you a price, you can say to him that his service sounds good, but you found another vendor who can do the job for 10% less. Ask Joe if he can give you a pricing break. Tell him that you'd like to do business with him, but you had a comparable vendor quote you a better price. Then say nothing. Wait for Joe to talk. Chances are he will offer you some kind of discount. So you'll wind up with the response time you wanted at the price you're willing to pay. In any important negotiation session, be sure to plan your questions in advance. Investigate what it is you are negotiating so that you can ask the right questions. Write down a list and practice them. When the time comes to ask, however, try to improvise or you'll sound too rehearsed. If you want to get a discount on a health club membership and you've done your homework, you know that you can get a much better rate in the summer than in January. Because in January, everyone goes on a diet and joins a gym because it's their New Year's resolution. So let's say you want to join in the summer. You might look at different discounts that the club offers. Visit the facility and see if it looks uncrowded. Then you can ask if certain discounts are available in the summer. If you don't ask, you won't get a deal. The person at the desk wants to sell you a membership. By doing your homework and planning questions in advance, you'll get the deal you're looking for. Listening is so important in negotiations. Ask open-ended questions and listen carefully to what the other person has to say. His comments should lead you to questions that give you the information you want. Fight the urge to always talk and listen more often to become a better negotiator. Listening helps you find out what the person really wants. Suppose you decide to hire a painter to work on your house. Before asking him about his rates, talk about how his business is going, how long the jobs take, and when he thinks he could begin work on your house. If he tells you he could start tomorrow, what do you think that means? It means that he's not busy. It means that he wants the work. It means that he might have some flexibility on the price. If he quotes you a price that's out of range from what you wanted to pay, you could tell him that you're interested in having the work done, but you expected to pay about 20% less. You're not in a rush to have the job done immediately, so you're willing to get a few more estimates before making up your mind. Sometimes in negotiations, people have a hidden agenda. Your job is to find out what that agenda is, so research the other party. Again, this is where asking open-ended questions and doing some research helps. Let's say you wanted to buy a house. Find out why that person is selling. Did they get divorced? Did they lose their job? Did they buy another house and have to relocate? The more you know about why they are selling the house, the more likely you'll be able to negotiate a better deal. You'll get the best perspective of how urgently they need to sell. If they're just putting the house up on the market and plan to sell it only if they can get a very high price and are not very motivated to move, you need to figure that out before making an offer. There are always people who have unusual hidden agendas. Listening can help you determine what they are. One man had a beachfront house on the market, but kept rejecting buyer after buyer. This was a great location, and many people were eager to buy the house. So after some checking around, a smart buyer discovered that the man wouldn't sell his house to anyone who considered tearing it down for lot value. One buyer did his homework. He said he loved the house and wouldn't think of tearing it down. He wouldn't change a thing. He got a great deal. And after a short period of time, he tore down the house and built the one he wanted. Some people might think he was a bit misleading, but it was his house and he could do with it what he wanted to. Research also involves finding the best location to negotiate. If you want to control a business negotiation, you should probably have the other party come to your office. It's the same kind of reasons why baseball teams usually play better on their own turf. You have more control and may be more relaxed in your own environment. I can also tell you that some of the best deals happen on the golf course. You spend the day golfing with your business contact, and you're away from the pressures of the office. You relax, the person doesn't think he's being sold all day, and you can gradually set the groundwork for a deal over a game. Later, you can follow up with the details, but you set the stage on the course by making this person feel comfortable and relax. It's the same philosophy as negotiating deals over lunch or dinner. An additional way to control the situation, if you're in a meeting setting, is to start with a written agenda. That way, you'll be sure that your points are covered. You'll have a written list of the discussion topics. That's where PowerPoint presentations come in very handy because they can keep you focused in a business setting. Another factor in research is timing. Did you ever see the movie Father the Bride? The father, Steve Martin, keeps having one expense after another, and the wedding costs go totally out of control. He pays and he pays and he pays, and he gets angrier with every bill but accepts it. Then he goes to the grocery store and discovers that the clerk overcharged him for hot dogs, and he goes berserk. How dare they overcharge him? The timing pushed him to his limit. Remember, timing when you ask for something is everything. If your wife is sitting at home paying the bills, you don't want to walk up and tell her about the new car you think you should buy. Wait until you're out to dinner and she's in a good mood before you bring up that subject. Also, here is one other rule to remember when out with your wife. If she puts on a new outfit and asks you if it makes her look fat, what is the answer? No matter what, the answer is always, no, you look great. Always remember that rule. In summary, do your research to be a better negotiator. Plan your questions in advance. Listen. Listen for information that helps give you the edge. Negotiate in a setting that's most comfortable for you. And make sure you ask for things at the right time. Engage. This is the E. This is where negotiations get to become fun. I'd like to review some of the rules of engagement. Here are a few of the key ones. Set your limits. Before you sell a car, buy a house, hire a maid, accept a job offer, have a number in mind that is acceptable to you. You may always ask for more, but know before going into any situation what you will settle for. If you don't set limits, you may get locked into something that you will later regret. I know someone who took a job that was $15,000 less than they wanted. They didn't set limits. The new boss offered the salary, and they took it without countering because they wanted the job. After a few months, they resented the fact that they were underpaid and went to work somewhere else. They could save that aggravation by asking for more money up front. Ask for more money up front. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. How many people have gotten into trouble because they hired a contractor and they didn't set limits in writing, or when the work could be done? People can save a lot of aggravation by having the contractor give a commitment in writing and make sure that if the job doesn't get done in time, the contractor has to reduce costs. This will help to ensure that your home isn't torn apart longer than you expect, and it motivates the contractor to finish the job on time. Get it in writing. Whenever you deal with someone on prices and terms, be sure to put this in writing. You'd be surprised at how many people do business over a handshake, only to be disappointed later when they haven't been paid or they are charged more than they are expecting. Document your negotiations. Make sure your contract is airtight. Explain the services you provide and the compensation you are due. After all, you've negotiated to be paid a certain sum. You should collect that. Companies that need you will sign a contract that says they will pay you at the beginning of a job. If you're a consultant, for example, and your clients expect you to do a lot of travel, make sure that your contract covers a certain amount allocated per diem to cover food and miscellaneous expenses, as well as the travel and hotel cost. If you want to reduce the amount of travel spent on the weekends, negotiate in a higher fee if the customer wants you to work on weekends. This may make the customer think twice before asking you to take a trip on a weekend. Don't make too many concessions up front. Let's say you have $500 negotiation room on a purchase. Don't automatically agree to a price that's $500 more than your limit. If you have to concede, maybe offer them $100 extra. Then the person may say they really need about $200 more, and you have a deal. Tell them you'll give them $75 more. The point is that With this strategy, you gave them $175, but not $500. Also, you reduced the amount during the second concession instead of increasing it. By tapering the concession, you're sending a message that you have limits. When someone tells you they don't want to negotiate, just give them a number. They're lying. They are negotiating because they want you to provide your bottom line price. They want you to give up everything all at once. Don't do that. Ask them to present you with their recommended prices or offer. This is so important, particularly if you're looking for a job. Don't tell them how much you want. Ask them how much they plan to pay and work up from there. I know someone who went on a job interview and was very glad he didn't give out a number when asked that question. The hiring company paid 20% more than he would have asked for. Do more listening than talking. Every time you open up your mouth, you better make sure that what you have to say contributes to the deal. People want to buy things. They don't want to feel like you're forcing something on them. So listen, pause, and respond. What about negotiating with your boss? Suppose you're working on a big project and he tells you that he needs something else right away. Both projects are important. Ask him to prioritize. Tell him that if you start work on a new task, it will require putting the other one on hold. Ask him to decide which is more important. If you don't ask, you may wind up working well into the evening trying to get both of them done when you really don't have to stay late. That's why it's so important to ask the right questions. As I mentioned earlier, the best negotiators are not afraid to ask for more than they expect. I know a woman who is an excellent fundraiser. Several times a year, she gets all the leading restaurants and businesses in her community to donate food items to a charity luncheon. These businesses get tapped on by so many organizations, but this woman never gets turned down. Why? Because she's never afraid to ask for what she wants. When she asks, she does it with confidence, assuming that you will contribute. She never requests things over the phone. She stops by the businesses with a packet that shows the great turnout and PR value the companies get by participating in this event. She now has vendors waiting in line to donate things a year in advance. In fact, she's convinced them how prestigious it is for them to be at these events. Give people more than they expect when you can. This woman, who is a great fundraiser, makes sure that all of the vendors who donate get plenty of publicity and recognition. She thanks them publicly and introduces them to other vendors. They don't expect to be introduced to other vendors, so she's giving them something extra so they will sign up with her again for the next event. Don't be afraid to name drop. If you know that your friend paid a lower price for a gardener and the gardener is trying to charge you more, find out why. Tell them that you don't understand why your rate is higher and you have the exact same requirements as your friend. Or if you personally know someone who is the head of the company in which you're trying to make a deal, don't be afraid to mention that person's name, especially if you're on good terms with them. If a negotiation gets too heated and it's going downhill by the minute, take a break. If you see things are just not going your way, ask the other party if you can check into some issues and get back to them later. Don't let the discussions deteriorate to the point where you lose control of your emotions. In summary, there are some key things to remember that will help you when you engage in negotiation. Set your limits on what you will pay for something or the price you plan to charge for a product or service. Don't go past those limits or you will regret it. Don't make too many concessions up front. When you do make concessions, taper them as you go through the process. As I mentioned earlier in the session, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. If you don't ask, you won't get it. Finally, the last E, for execute. I've covered basic information about negotiation. Now, I'd like to prepare you to be a great negotiator, even in the most difficult situations with people that seem uncompromising. I'm going to focus on some fine points that will make the difference in closing deals or getting people to accept your point of view. One of the biggest challenges is dealing with difficult people. You know the kind. They go with the motto, "My mind is made up, so don't confuse me with the facts." How do you get them to come around to what you want? Never begin a negotiation with an argument. Instead, try to agree and then turn the situation in your favor. Be careful what you say when you start negotiating. If you argue with the other person right away, even if you totally disagree with what he's saying, you're going to make him much less willing to agree with you. Instead, you've got to relate to him with something like this. I can understand why you feel that way, because other people have had the same initial reaction about the cost of this product. This will take him off guard, particularly if he was trying to control the process. Then as the conversation evolves, you can tell him that after he looks at all the things the product provides, you think he'll understand why the product is a bargain. Never try to negotiate based on emotional value if you're dealing with someone who only wants the facts. If you're an engineer, chances are you're not going to want someone to see something because it's going to make you feel better, look better, or offer some other benefit that is very subjective. You're going to want the facts, the dollars, and the details. So anyone who tries to sell you a house, a car, and services probably won't be able to negotiate based on an intangible emotional value of these items or services. They should remember to show you details, comparisons, and numbers. Dealing with the procurement department of a big organization is never easy. My friend worked for a big company and found one vendor who did a great job at a very fair price. She knew that the head of the procurement department had a company goal of trying to squeeze every last cent of the vendors. She knew that her vendor would pass on doing the job if he was nickel and dimed on every contract. So she was prepared to do battle with the procurement guy. She put together lots of documentation supporting why she shouldn't have to reduce the vendor's rates and list of how he compared with other vendors requiring quality and cost. So the procurement guy knew that this wouldn't be easy, and he simply backed down and improved the bid. Master the art of rephrasing a question to deal with objections. If you're selling a couch and the customer says he likes the couch, but he doesn't like the price because he just started a new job and is on a budget, then turn the question around. So, Mr. Jones, you mentioned that comfort was very important to you. Did you find the couch to be comfortable? He agrees. You say, and you mentioned that you liked the color and the size was just what you're looking for. Is that correct? He says it is. So this couch offers you comfort, it's the right size and the right color. The only issue is the price. The customer agrees. You say, well, Mr. Jones, this couch has a lifetime guarantee, and many of the less expensive couches don't offer that, and they may not be the right size or color for your living room. We have a zero-interest loan, and you don't have to pay anything for a full year. At this point, you've sold him on the benefits and found a way that he can deal with the price issue. Body language is important in negotiations. Everything from the way you and the person you're negotiating with's appearance to nonverbal expressions. If someone has a glare and seems tense, that's a sign that you're going to have to change directions real fast. If the person is looking away and not paying attention, you may need to take action to get him to listen. Figure out why he's distracted. Maybe it's because the negotiation is going on later than he planned. Maybe it's because he's frustrated with you, or maybe he doesn't really want to be there in the first place. Ask him a question. You might ask if he needed more clarification regarding what you were discussing. Body language is also about space and intimidation. When someone is trying to take control, they might move into your space and get close. Bring help when you need it to sell. But be careful how many people you bring in to close a deal. I know one salesman who almost had a great deal on a big technology sale. The salesman had a meeting set up and his boss attended, as well as his boss's boss. The customer felt too much pressure with all these people. The guy lost the deal and eventually his job. One of the most difficult people to negotiate with is the screamer. This person is out of control. He thinks if he gets really loud, he'll intimidate you and get his way. Screaming back does not work when someone is very angry. Instead, say something like, I can understand why you might have some concerns. Maybe we can schedule this meeting for a better time. It does not pay to get into a yelling match. Know when to close the deal and leave. One of the biggest mistakes people can make is to keep talking once the deal is made. If you're not careful, you can talk yourself right out of a deal. So once you know you've closed your deal, make a graceful exit. Know when to walk away, even when the deal isn't closed. Here's an example I call, you can keep the house. Let's say you want to buy a house, and you've settled on almost everything. Then at the last minute, the seller wants you to pay extra for things you hadn't expected. He's going to charge you for the appliances he was originally going to give you for free. He wants you to have a 20-day escrow instead of 60-day you discuss. He starts bringing up other expenses you're going to have to pay. All of a sudden, you realize that it may just not be worth dealing with this person. That's when you can tell him, you can keep your house. I'm no longer interested. Watch the seller have a big change of heart. If not, there are other houses on the market that you can buy. I remember one time I was negotiating to buy a house from a gentleman whose job was to negotiate contracts for this large airlines and their employees. This man kept negotiating and negotiating and negotiating and negotiating. Finally, I looked at him and I told him he won. And he looked at me and I said, "You get to keep your house." The airline this man worked for, about a month later, filed bankruptcy because that airline could not reach terms with its employees. This man negotiated too much. He negotiated for the sake of negotiating, and what happens? He walked away with nothing for his house, and then when he lost the negotiation with his employees, the company went bankrupt and he lost his job. You have to know when to stop negotiating. Sometimes the other party walks away. At this point, you can either try to pull him back with something that will entice him to buy, or follow up later with a new offer, or decide to let him walk. The choice you pick depends on the situation and how badly you need to close the deal. What have we learned in this section? Even if the other party is looking for an argument, never begin a negotiation in anger. If somebody only wants the facts, it may not be easy selling them on the emotional value of the product or service you're negotiating. So try to understand what the person is after and appeal to them on that level. Don't bring in more people than you need to close a deal. It could only result in scaring the customer. And finally, know when to walk away from a deal that will be more work than it's worth. I know these strategies in the Agree approach will help you become a better negotiator in your business and personal dealings. It will help you evaluate how you acted in various dealings so that you can learn from your mistakes. Follow these suggestions, and they can help you make more money. They can improve the overall quality of your life by being able to get others to see your point of view. Remember those important steps in this approach to help you negotiate more effectively. A, ask questions. Set goals. G, research the other party and be prepared. Execute with good negotiating strategies, and excel by learning how to act when you're in difficult situations. We can help you take your negotiations to the next level and improve your skills overall through mentoring. If you need more help, please visit my website at www.bruceaberman.com. I have a free question and answer form on that site. There you will find I receive and reply to a wide variety of my clients' questions. I also offer additional services like Bruce A. Berman, personal mentoring. If you have any questions, please send me an email from the Ask Bruce link on www.bruceaberman.com. And thank you.